The observation deck was nearly empty at this late hour, its massive, transparent dome offering an unobstructed view of the Andromeda Nebula's spiral arms. Kestra had discovered this sanctuary during her second week at the Academy, a place where she could remove her light-dampening suit without disturbing anyone. The cosmic vista seemed to welcome her glow, making her feel less like an anomaly and more like part of the universe's grand design. She pressed her palm against the cool transper steel, watching her bioluminescence create soft patterns across the surface. Out here, surrounded by the infinite darkness of space, punctuated by distant stars, her light didn't feel intrusive or wrong. It felt natural, purposeful, like an echo of the stellar formations dancing beyond the station's hull. "I've never seen anything so beautiful." Kestra spun around, hastily reaching for her discarded light-dampening hood, but stopped when she saw the speaker. A young man stood near the entrance, his dark hair catching the reflected glow from her skin. Unlike every other student who had encountered her unshielded presence, he wasn't shielding his eyes or backing away. Instead, he moved closer, his expression filled with wonder rather than discomfort. "I'm sorry," she stammered, fumbling with the fabric. "I didn't realize anyone else would be here. I'll put this back on. Please don't." His voice carried a gentleness that made her pause. "I'm Orion Blackwood, from the Asteroid Mining Collective. I've spent most of my life in the deep dark between worlds and your light. It's like seeing home again." Kestra studied his face, searching for signs of the polite tolerance she'd grown accustomed to, but found only genuine fascination. "You're not from a planet?" Orion shook his head, moving to stand beside her at the viewing wall. "Born on mining station Kepler 442, raised on freight haulers and asteroid processors. The only light I knew growing up came from distant stars and the occasional pulsar. Your glow reminds me of those navigation beacons we'd use to find our way through the void." She watched as her bioluminescence painted soft shadows across his features, noting how he leans slightly toward the light rather than away from it. "Most people find it distracting, overwhelming." "Most people haven't spent 18 years learning to navigate by starlight," Orion replied. "They don't understand that light and darkness isn't harsh, it's hope. It's guidance. It's beautiful." For the first time in months, Kestra felt her natural luminescence shift from the anxious amber it had maintained since arriving at the Academy to something softer, more azure, the color of contentment her people produced when truly at peace. Orion noticed the change immediately. "Your light just changed," he observed, with scientific curiosity rather than alarm. "It went from golden to blue. Reflects emotional states," Kestra explained, surprised to find herself sharing this information freely. "Golden indicates stress or uncertainty. Blue is ... happiness.com, like a mood ring, but infinitely more elegant." Orion's smile was warm, unguarded. "What other colors can you produce?" As if responding to his interest, Kestra's skin began cycling through a gentle spectrum violet for curiosity, silver for hope, and finally settling on a warm pink that she'd never shown another being outside her family. The color of trust, of connection forming. "That's incredible," Orion breathed. "You're not just bioluminescent. You're communicating constantly. It's like wearing your heart on your skin." "Which is why most species find it uncomfortable," Kestra said. "They prefer their emotions private, contained. My people evolved in deep caves where visual communication was essential for survival. But here, you're surrounded by beings who've forgotten how to appreciate light." Orion turned to face her fully. "In the mining colonies, we have a saying. The darkness teaches you to treasure every photon. Most students at this academy have never experienced true darkness, so they don't understand the gift you carry." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the nebula's slow rotation while Kestra's bioluminescence painted the observation deck in gentle, shifting hues. For the first time since leaving Luminos, she felt understood rather than merely tolerated. "Orion," she said finally, "would you like to meet here again tomorrow night? I'd like to show you more of what my light can do." "Ack!" His answer came in the form of a smile that rivaled the distant stars for brightness. I wouldn't miss it for all the asteroid gold in the collective. Kestra Vale pressed herself against the corridor wall as a group of Centaurian students passed by, their metallic skin reflecting her soft glow like unwanted spotlights. Even through the thick fabric of her light-dampening suit, enough luminescence seeped through to cause several of them to shield their sensitive eyes and quicken their pace. She waited until their footsteps faded before continuing toward the dining hall. Her shoulders hunched under the weight of fabric designed to contain what her people considered a gift, but others seemed to view as a curse. New Terra Orbital Academy stretched before her like a gleaming maze of opportunity and isolation. The prestigious institution drew students from across the galaxy, each species bringing their own unique adaptations and challenges. But none had seemed quite like hers. The Luminari of planet Luminos had evolved their bioluminescence as a sophisticated form of communication. Their skin capable of producing patterns and intensities that conveyed complex emotions and thoughts. In the deep caves where her ancestors had lived for millennia, this ability had been essential for survival. In the sterile, controlled environment of the Academy, it was simply a distraction. The dining hall buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages as Kestra made her way to the automated food dispensers. She kept her hood pulled low, the specialized fabric woven with light-absorbing fibers that made her feel like she was wrapped in a suffocating blanket. Even so, a faint aura managed to escape around her collar and sleeves, pulsing gently with each heartbeat in patterns that reflected her growing anxiety. "Excuse me, could you move to a different section?" Voice belonged to an Ixarian student. Their translucent blue skin, showing the telltale signs of optical strain, your ... condition, is making it difficult for our study group to concentrate. Kestra nodded quickly, gathering her tray without meeting their multifaceted eyes. This was the third time this week she'd been asked to relocate, always politely, always with the understanding that everyone was just trying to coexist peacefully. She found an empty table in the far corner of the hall, positioned near the maintenance, a section where the lighting was already dim, and her presence would be less noticeable. As she ate her meal in silence, Kestra watched other students interact with an ease she envied. Deltrian students communicated through harmonic vibrations that created beautiful, flowing conversations. Christian students shared thoughts through brief physical contact, their crystalline skin chiming softly when they touched. Even the void-touched students from the outer rim found acceptance, their shadow-like forms drifting between solid and ethereal as they pleased. But her light, no matter how she tried to control or contain it, seemed to mark her as other in a way that transcended simple physical difference. It wasn't just that it was unusual, it was that it couldn't be ignored or forgotten. Every moment she spent in a room with others, her presence was announced by the soft, persistent glow that emanated from her very being. Kestra pulled out her personal tablet and dimmed the screen to its lowest setting, the light from the device barely more than her own natural radiance. She'd been working on a project about bioadaptation across different environments, hoping to find some academic purpose for her extensive knowledge of her own species' evolution. But even her professors seemed uncomfortable during presentations, subtly suggesting she might consider remote learning options or private tutoring arrangements. The dining hall gradually emptied as students returned to their dormitories or study. Sessions Kestra remained seated, unwilling to navigate the crowded corridors during peak movement times. In the growing quiet, she allowed herself a moment of rebellion, loosening the collar of her light-dampening suit just enough to let a small portion of her natural radiance show. The soft, pearl-like glow felt like breathing after holding her breath all day. It was a small act of defiance, but in the empty corner of the dining hall, surrounded by the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant murmur of the space station's daily operations, it felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. Tomorrow, she would pull the hood back up, tighten the light-blocking fabric, and continue trying to fit into a world that seemed determined to dim everything that made her unique. But for now, in this moment of solitude, Kestra allowed herself to shine. Professor Helix Torrance's Advanced Bioadaptation Laboratory was a marvel of interspecies accommodation. The atmospheric controls, lighting adjustments, specialized equipment designed to support students from dozens of different evolutionary backgrounds. Today, however, the usual harmony was disrupted by a cluster of agitated voices near the central workstation where Kestra sat alone. Her light-dampening suit pulled tight despite the professor's repeated encouragement for students to embrace their natural adaptations during class. "With respect, Professor," called out Vex Thorn, "as a student from the high-gravity world of Titan's Rest, how are we supposed to concentrate on cellular analysis when there's a strobe light at our table?" Several other students murmured agreement, their various forms of body language indicating discomfort. The Sensorian twins' empathic fields were fluctuating with agitation. While the Equilibrium student had shifted to their stress response coloration, mottled brown that indicated extreme discomfort. Kestra began gathering her materials, the familiar routine of retreat already beginning, but Professor Torn's voice stopped her movement. "Miss Vale, please remain seated. Class, gather around the central demonstration area." Today's lesson just became far more relevant than I had planned. The professor's biomechanical appendages, a result of his own species' symbiotic evolution with technology, adjusted the laboratory's lighting to a softer spectrum, his compound eyes, capable of perceiving light wavelengths far beyond most. Species range, focused on Kestra with scientific interest rather than judgment. What Miss Vale possesses is not a distraction. It's a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering that your textbooks can only approximate. He gestured to the holographic display that materialized above the central workstation. The luminary of planet Luminos evolved in cave systems where traditional vocal or visual communication was impossible. Their bioluminescence isn't merely light, it's language. The hologram showed cross-sections of luminary skin, highlighting the specialized cells responsible for light production. Kestra felt her anxiety begin to shift as the professor continued his explanation. Her skin responding with subtle color changes that the advanced sensors in the laboratory immediately detected and translated. "Observe," Professor Torn said, pointing to the real-time readings appearing on the display. Ms. Vale's current emission signature indicates a complex emotional state, anxiety mixed with hope, overlaid with a deep longing for acceptance. In her culture, this information would be immediately understood and responded to appropriately. Xander Cross, a human student from Earth's European Union, leaned forward with obvious interest. "So she's essentially broadcasting her emotional state constantly?" "More than that," the professor replied. "Miss Vale, would you be comfortable demonstrating the communication aspects of your bioluminescence?" Kestra hesitated, glancing around at the assembled students whose expressions had shifted from annoyance to curiosity. Slowly, she loosened her light-dampening collar and allowed her natural radiance to emerge. As she focused on specific thoughts and emotions, her skin began producing patterns, waves of blue light that pulsed in complex rhythms. She's communicating gratitude for understanding, followed by hope for friendship. Professor Torn translated, consulting the linguistic database. The luminary language contains over 3,000 distinct light patterns, each capable of conveying concepts that would require entire sentences in verbal languages. The demonstration continued as Kestra, growing more confident, began showing different emotional and conceptual patterns. Her relief at finally being understood manifested as cascading silver waves, while her curiosity about her classmates' reactions created intricate geometric patterns in violet and gold. Myra Salas, a student from the aquatic world of Nereid, raised her webbed hand. "Professor, if this is such an advanced form of communication, why do other species find it disturbing?" "An excellent question," Professor Torn replied. "Most species evolved communication methods that could be controlled, modulated, or concealed when necessary. The luminari developed in an environment where concealing one's emotional state could be fatal if someone was injured, afraid, or lost. The community needed to know immediately." He paused, allowing this to sink in before continuing. "What you perceive as overwhelming is actually Miss Vale being perpetually honest about her emotional state. She cannot lie, cannot hide her feelings, cannot pretend to be something she's not. In a universe where deception is common, this level of authenticity can be challenging to process." The laboratory fell silent as students contemplated this revelation. Kestra felt her bioluminescence shift to a warm amber knot, the stressed gold of anxiety. but the deeper amber of vulnerability mixed with hope. Assignment for next week, Professor Torn announced, is to research and present on the communication methods of each student species, with particular attention to how these methods might be misunderstood by other cultures. Miss Vale, I'd like you to partner with Mr. Thorne. I believe you both have much to learn from each other. As the class dispersed, several students lingered to ask Kestra questions about her light patterns. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she found herself at the center of attention, not as a disturbance, but as a subject of genuine academic interest. The alarm klaxons began wailing at 0347 hours, their discordant shriek cutting through the academy's usual nighttime quiet like a blade through silk. Kestra jolted awake in her dormitory, her bioluminescence immediately flaring to a brilliant white, her species' automatic response to danger. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in harsh red as students emerged from their quarters, confused and frightened. All students report to designated safety zones immediately. Captain Jet Meridian's voice echoed through the communication system. We are experiencing a Class 7 solar storm with associated electromagnetic interference. Primary power grid is compromised. Kestra pulled on her light-dampening suit out of habit, then hesitated. In the emergency lighting's crimson glow, her natural luminescence was barely noticeable anyway. She left the suit behind and joined the stream of students, moving through corridors that seemed more maze-like in the dim emergency lighting. The main assembly hall was chaos. Students clustered in species-specific groups, their various forms of stress response, creating a cacophony of colors, sounds, and electromagnetic emanations. The Nexarian's crystalline formations were chiming in harmonic distress while the void touched. Students flickered between solid and ethereal forms in agitation. Captain Meridian, a tall woman whose cybernetic implants marked her as a survivor of the frontier wars, stood at the central podium attempting to maintain order. The solar storm has damaged our primary navigation array and several key systems. We're operating on backup power, which means reduced life support and lighting until the lights went out completely. Emergency power had failed, plunging the assembly hall into absolute darkness. Panic erupted immediately. Screams, the crash of furniture being overturned, distinctive sound of different species' fear responses creating an overwhelming sensory assault. Everyone remained calm. Captain Meridian's voice cut through the chaos, but in the absolute darkness, her words seemed to dissolve into the void. That's when Kestra made her decision. She pulled off light-dampening hood and allowed her bioluminescence to flare to full intensity. The soft, pearl-like radiance pushed back the darkness, creating a pool of gentle light that immediately drew attention. Students nearest to her stopped panicking, their eyes adjusting to focus on this unexpected beacon. Here, she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Everyone moved toward the light. Orion appeared at her side as if summoned, his experience with void navigation making him invaluable in the darkness. Kestra, can you control the intensity? We need to create waypoints to guide people to the emergency exits. She nodded, understanding. Immediately, her bioluminescence shifted from the bright white of alarm to a steady, directional blue, the color her people used for guidance. Other students began moving toward her, using her light as a reference point in the disorienting darkness. Brilliant, Captain Meridian's voice came from nearby. Miss Vale, are you able to maintain that output while moving? Yes, Captain. My light doesn't drain energy the way artificial systems do, it's biological. Then you're our new navigation system, Mr. Blackwood. I understand you have experience with void operations. Asteroid mining and freight navigation, ma'am, Orion confirmed. Good, you two coordinate student evacuation to the emergency shelter areas. Use Miss Vale's bioluminescence as a beacon system. I need you to establish waypoints throughout the station. What followed was the most extraordinary few hours of Kestra's life. Instead of hiding her light, she used it to guide hundreds of students through darkened corridors to safety. Her bioluminescence became a communication system, shifting colors to indicate directions, dangers, and destinations. Blue for safe passage, amber for caution, violet for assembly points. Orion proved to be the perfect partner, his void navigation skills, allowing him to map the station's layout mentally, while her light provided the visual reference points needed to guide groups of frightened students. Together, established a network of light-based signals that allowed Captain Meridian's emergency teams to maintain order and execute evacuation procedures with remarkable efficiency, Kestra Orion said during a brief rest period, as they waited for the next group of students to organize. "You realize what you've done tonight, don't you?" She looked around at the organized evacuation proceeding smoothly through corridors lit by her gentle radiance. Students who had once avoided her presence now looked to her light with gratitude and relief. Her difference, the very thing that had made her an outsider, had become the Academy's salvation. "I've just been myself," she replied, but she was smiling, her bioluminescence shifting to the warm pink of deep satisfaction. "You've been extraordinary, Captain," Meridian said, approaching them with a group of senior staff. "Miss Vale, your actions tonight have saved lives and prevented what could have been a catastrophic panic situation. The Academy owes you a debt of gratitude." As emergency power was gradually restored over the next few hours, Kestra found herself surrounded by students expressing thanks, asking questions about her abilities, and treating her presence as welcome, rather than intrusive. The crisis had stripped away pretense and social discomfort, revealing the simple truth that light and darkness was always a gift, never a burden. 6 months after the solar storm, Kestra stood before her reflection in the dormitory mirror. But the person looking back bore little resemblance to the frightened, isolated student who had first arrived at New Terra Orbital Academy. Gone was the light-dampening suit that had become like a second skin. Instead, she wore a flowing garment designed to complement her bioluminescence fabric that enhanced rather than concealed her natural radiance. Tonight was graduation, and she had been selected as the student speaker, an honor that would have been unimaginable during her early days at the Academy. More importantly, she would be speaking not as someone trying to hide what made her different, but as someone celebrating the diversity that made their community stronger, a soft chime indicated. A visitor at her door. "Come in," she called, already knowing who it would be. Orion entered, wearing the formal attire of the asteroid mining collectiva, his deep blue uniform that complemented his dark hair and seemed to make her light dance more beautifully across his features. And in his hands was a small package wrapped in star chart paper. "Graduation gift," he said, offering the package with a smile that had become as familiar as her own reflection. Inside was a small crystal, perfectly clear and multifaceted, designed to catch and refract light in spectacular ways. When Kestra's bioluminescence touched it, the crystal burst into a miniature aurora, casting rainbow patterns across the walls. "It's a navigation crystal from the Kepler system," Orion explained. "Miners use them to amplify and focus light signals across vast distances." "Well, I thought it might remind you that your light was always meant to reach far places and guide people home." Kestra felt her luminescence shift through the entire spectrum of emotions: gratitude, affection, hope, and something deeper that she was still learning to name Orion these past months. "You've helped me understand that being different isn't the same as being wrong. You helped me understand that the most beautiful things in the universe are often the ones that shine." "In their own way," he replied, reaching out to take her hand. Where their skin touched, her bioluminescence created gentle waves of silver and gold. They made their way to the Academy's main auditorium, where hundreds of graduates and their families had assembled for the ceremony. The space had been modified, with adjustable lighting to accommodate various species' needs. But tonight, instead of dimming the lights to minimize Kestra's impact, the Academy had chosen to embrace the full spectrum of student diversity. Captain Meridian, now bearing the additional title of Academy Director of Emergency Preparedness, introduced Kestra with words that would have seemed impossible months earlier. "Our student speaker tonight represents the very best of what our Academy strives to achieve, the understanding that our differences are not obstacles to overcome, but strengths to celebrate." Kestra took the podium, her natural luminescence casting gentle patterns across the assembly. When she spoke, her voice carried the confidence of someone who had learned to value what made her unique. "When I first arrived at this academy," she began, "I believed that fitting in meant making myself smaller, dimmer, less than what I was born to be. I spent months trying to hide the very thing that makes me who I am, convinced that my differences were a burden others shouldn't have to bear." Her bioluminescence shifted to the warm amber of reflection as she continued. Me something invaluable not through its curriculum, though that was excellent, but through the crisis that stripped away our pretenses and forced us to see each other clearly. In the darkness of that emergency, I learned that what makes us different often makes us indispensable. The audience was completely silent. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species focused on her words, and the gentle light showed that accompanied them. We are all here because we represent the future of galactic cooperation. Each species, each individual brings something unique to this community. The Nexarians' harmonic communication, the void touched, dimensional flexibility. The humans' adaptability. The Deltrions' vibrational languages. All of these differences create a symphony of potential that would be impossible with uniformity. As she spoke about the support group she and Orion had founded for students with unique adaptations, her light shifted to the silver of hope. The group had grown from just the two of them to over 50 students, creating a network of understanding. That had transformed the Academy's social dynamic. Tonight, as we graduate and prepare to take our places in the galaxy, I challenge each of you to remember that the universe is vast and dark. It's filled with challenges that will require every kind of light we can offer. Don't dim yourselves too. Make others comfortable. Shine brightly, authentically, and trust that those who matter will appreciate the illumination you provide. The applause was thunderous, but what moved Kestra most were the patterns of light, sound, and energy that rippled through the diverse audience, each species expressing approval in their own unique way, creating a celebration as varied and beautiful as the students themselves. Later, at the graduation dance, Kestra and Orion found themselves at the center of a gentle crowd. Other students had discovered that dancing near her created beautiful effects, her bioluminescence responding to the music and movement, painting the dance floor and shifting patterns of color that enhanced rather than overwhelmed the celebration. "Look around," Orion whispered as they swayed together. Her crystal pendant, catching and amplifying her light into constellation patterns across the ceiling. "You're not hiding anymore, and the universe is more beautiful for it." Kestra smiled, allowing her bioluminescence to pulse in rhythm with the music, creating waves of color that swept across the dance floor. Students of every species moved within her light, their own unique characteristics highlighted and celebrated rather than hidden. She had spent so long trying to dim herself to fit into others' expectations that she had forgotten the fundamental truth. Orion had helped her rediscover the universe was already full of darkness. What it needed was more light, more diversity, more individuals brave enough to shine exactly as they were meant to shine. As the evening progressed and the celebration continued around them, Kestra realized that her journey at the Academy had come full circle. She had arrived as someone desperately trying to hide her differences and was leaving as someone determined to help others embrace theirs. The light that had once seemed like a burden had become her greatest gift, not just the bioluminescence itself, but the understanding that authentic self-expression was the brightest beacon anyone could offer a universe in need of guidance. In the gentle glow that surrounded them, Kestra and Orion danced among the stars, their friendship a testament to the truth that sometimes the most beautiful connections happen not despite our differences, but because of them.